It's another day in pandemic paradise, and I'm feeling exhausted.
That's David Lenning, Emmy-winning executive sports producer for WPLG Local 10, which covers news and sports in South Florida. David is my second oldest friend. His older brother, Jonathan, is my oldest friend, who I've known since kindergarten. It takes many people years and several career changes to find out what they want to be when they grow up. David's not one of them. He's always had his sights set on sports and media, growing up as a Miami Hurricanes fan, New York Giants fan, New York Yankees, and Miami Heat, then jumping with the rest of the Cameron Crazies as a student at Duke University to where he is today. We discuss what a sports producer does when there are no sports to produce. But first, an update on the professional sports landscape since this interview was recorded. The NBA. The NBA's Board of Governors approved a competitive format to restart the 2019-2020 season with 22 teams returning to play and a tentative start date of July 31st at Walt Disney World Resorts. Pending the Players Association, this is a go. MLB. Major League Baseball and the Players Association have been negotiating for almost a month about a return-to-play plan for the 2020 season. NHL. Phase 4 of the return-to-play plan, that's a mouthful, will have a qualifying round and seeding round robin leading into the Stanley Cup playoffs, but when that would be has not been determined. The NFL. The NFL, which has never cared about safety, isn't changing a thing, with all games set to start with the August 6th Hall of Fame game and set to be played as scheduled, barring any change. Tennis. The U.S. Open is scheduled for August 31st and will be the first Grand Slam to be played since the pandemic hit. The French Open is postponed until September, and Wimbledon has been canceled. PGA. It's golf. Who cares? All right, now back to David.
And my daughter gets up at like 5:30 in the morning, and these days are so long that I need to be full tank. I can't go at it. God, I miss the days of being like 20 and like living in downtown Miami, and you go out till 4 o'clock in the morning, and then the next day is just a waste. You just wake up and you can't do that with kids.
Has anyone ever said, I don't miss the days when I was in my 20s living in downtown Miami and staying until 4 in the morning?
I did my best.
But okay, so as a sports producer, what do you do? And an Emmy-winning sport. Come on, let's see it. Grab it. This is a real Emmy.
I see everybody else position these behind them.
Well, you know what I have? You have that. I have this. My son got this for me.
I did it for a reason, because every time you see someone on TV and they're home, they all put. So I have one. So I'm like, it's subtle, but it wasn't subtle because I held it right. But I was like,
You could tie it to a bunch of helium balloons like an up and just have it float around.
As a sports producer, when a transcendent story happens, and I've covered enough transcendent stories. I've slept on the floor of the station covering hurricanes where I've had to stay at the station for 3 or 4 days. Parkland, you think there was any sports for the next 2 weeks after Parkland, which was in South Florida? Jose Fernandez died, which was a sports story, but became a gigantic national news story, the former Marlins pitcher who got in a boat accident.
Right.
So I recognized right away when this happened that we're not going to be doing sports for a very long time. My background, I started as a news. I've always worked with the sports department, but my background was in news. So I'm not uncomfortable in news. And that's just more important right now. And we all realize that.
Is there any sports news?
So actually, yes.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things is we have a Sunday night sports show, a half-hour sports show, and we're still doing it. And what's funny is my boss has asked me, like, can you do a sports show? And I learned a very long time ago that when someone asks you if you can do something, the answer is always yes. And the truth is, and this is something I've believed since day one as a sports producer, no excuses. Like, there's always something. You can always find something. When are they going to come back? How are the leagues reacting? What are the athletes posting on social media about themselves in quarantine? The teams have been really great about getting us guests, so we interview guests. I can fill a show. The bottom line is I can fill a show. And the other thing that I thought is, okay, so if you look at the week schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're getting news all the time. Why not have a half hour where people who are fans of our show, and there are fans of our show, get to still see sports?
So as a fan, though, this has to be hurting also, right? I mean, we're both avid Miami Heat fans, and this was a really exciting season for them.
Yeah.
They were overachieving,
Yeah.
and then everything is halted. You're a Duke alumnus,
Yeah.
and Duke, they're Zionlists, and so they weren't what they were last year, but
Last year was something that was different. Yeah.
they're always going to.
No, it would.
Great
I
days in
mean,
the tournament.
I love the NCAA tournament. I
Yeah.
love the NBA. I love basketball. I'm a hoops
Right.
junkie, and
You're a big Yankee fan, and I'm
huge
still
Yankee
friends with
fan.
you.
And no, it's you know what? It's funny. I'll give you an example of how much this breaks up my routine. I sleep next to my wife, as many people choose to do. And
Wait a second.
Yes. So anyway, so we share a bed. We co-bed.
Just the two of you, right?
Yeah, just us. Well,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
sometimes my daughter will come up if she's having a bad dream, but generally speaking, it's just my wife and I.
Got
And
it.
so, like, one day, shortly after it started, my wife's like, God, it's really weird not falling asleep to a Heat game. Because usually, like, I'll come home and, like, if I'll, like, hang out and I'll watch a Heat game while she falls asleep. And so it's just that routine. Or, I mean, baseball, I would drive home between shows and I'd listen to the Yankee game on the radio. And then my wife would watch a bad reality show and I would watch, baseball on my phone. And it's just so seeped into what I do all the time that, I mean, it's a death. It feels like a death. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's coming back in some
Right.
capacity, in some time, in some way, in some
Yeah.
space.
Well,
But,
and when you think about it, especially for sports fans, but even non-sports fans, right? I mean, like our wives, sports really dictates time and space and schedule, and without that,
dude, I haven't had the remote. I haven't had the remote in like a month and a half because I don't have other than like there's like two shows I like, but other than Brockmire and Dave, which are the two shows I like, good shows by the way.
Yeah, check those out.
I just it's like, here, just watch whatever you want. I got nothing. I'll just play on Twitter, or the cesspool that is, and that's what I'll do.
What do you think? What will sports look like when when we get the all clear, when shelter in place is lifted?
I think it's gonna be weird at first. I think it's just because, like, I think it's gonna be a weird trade-off, right? Because crowd noise and just atmosphere is such a part of sports. It's like going to see. It would be like if, I know you're a big Pearl Jam fan, right? It would be the difference between seeing Pearl Jam at Wrigley Field and Eddie Vedder jamming on his balcony alone.
It'd be pretty cool though to have that experience.
Aspects of it that I think will be pretty cool, because
Right.
I think like that. Now I'm thinking as a television producer, the natural sound. If there's trash talk, if they're arguing with a ref, if a coach curses a lot, if like you're gonna get more access to the games, which I think is a thing that's gonna happen if they play without fans, which I think is most likely in whatever way the sports do it. But you're gonna lose a lot of the, you're going to lose a lot. But I think the sports leagues are going to be a very complicated jigsaw puzzle, because here's the problem that sports run into. The best way to do it, and even Dr. Fauci said this, right? You got to test. So you test all the guys once a week or more. You got to isolate them. So these guys, if you're doing like basketball, it's not so bad because you're already in the playoffs. So for some of these guys, it's a week. Some of these guys, it's 2 weeks. Some of these guys, it's longer. But you can get the playoffs done in a month and a half if you're really smart about it. Baseball, 162 game season. Even if you play a 100-game schedule, you're asking these guys to be away from their family, quarantined for 4 months. That's not such an easy ask of people.
Right.
And you have players unions and okay, but let me just talk about testing for a second, right? So in order for the sports to come back, testing has to be a part of it, okay? Because you can't have transmission. The refs have to be tested. The people who clean and work in the hotel and cook and everything in the hotels. Their drivers have to be tested.
The size and scope of it is so big.
But here's the problem. If society as a whole doesn't have that level of testing, but sports does it, it's going to be a really, really bad look. If baseball can get 5,000 tests a week for all their players and staff and coaches, but like inner city Chicago can't, people are going to have a major problem with that.
Right, and that could mirror.
That's the really tight rope that, as bad as we want sports, it would be a terrible look for all the leagues to be like, you know what? I know society's kind of screwed with all this testing stuff, but we have access. I mean, look, you saw some of that blowback when Rudy Gobert got COVID initially, right? There was backlash where people were like, how is it the Jazz can get tested, but the old age home in my neighborhood can't get tested, or and so that sort of inequality jumps out at people. And when you're a league that's relying on television, not a good look. And as much as I think people want to go, oh, it's sports. I mean, in the bigger scope of things, there's so much more important stuff to worry about. But I think it's a thing. I think it's something people care about. I think it's something that's functional in people's lives. When you rip away all sense of normalcy from people, something that grounds them in their normal thought patterns and their normal conversations and their normal, I mean, we're usually texting each other right now about, the Canes spring game and about, and what do we think of this quarterback and what do you hear?
Yeah.
So much normal has been taken from everybody that I think it's unfair to just dismiss this idea that sports are irrelevant, because I don't think they're relevant. And by the way, they are an economic boom. You think if the NBA comes back and does the finals, that's not going to help ABC? You think that's not, and you don't think that you think they want to lose, and the NBA stands to lose like $700 million if they don't play the finals.
Well, so
$700 million.
So, a question about that. Let's look at the NBA as an example of a league that has done a pretty good job of taking the lead on many things. If and when the league resumes, and I'm going to follow up about what your thoughts are on if they cancel the season, but how will those decisions be made? Does it come from the top? Is it Adam Silver?
Yes.
And then how does it trickle down from there?
It's him. I mean, it's his league, it's his responsibility, it's his legacy, it's his choice. I can say this: I've been super impressed by Adam Silver. Not just because he's a Duke grad. I think he's smart. I think he's reasonable. I think he has the ability to hold two thoughts at the same time that may be contradictory. I think he's respectful of people of all beliefs and backgrounds, and he's done a really good job overall as commissioner.
But okay,
and I think ultimately he will decide. They will discuss. He'll talk with people who he trusts and he knows.
Yeah.
And he'll say it's go time, or he'll say we're shutting it down. I think that necessity is the mother of invention, and there's a lot of necessity right now. And so I think there's going to be a lot of inventing, and I think that's the only way we're getting out of this thing is through creativity, ingenuity, and just trying stuff. And I think that that's what the leagues are probably going to do.
You nailed it earlier about creativity and the pivoting, and just this discussion about how the leagues are going to shift and accommodate.
You get to reinvent the sport, right?
Yeah.
They can reinvent. Baseball's been played the same way for 100-something years, and all of a sudden they're like, "What if we played 7 innings?"
Right.
That's crazy. But you know what? A little crazy might be required to get through this, because
it might be. And the biggest irony is that it will have taken a pandemic to create more efficiencies,
100%.
and quite possibly better leagues.
Or how about just Mother Earth healing? If 30% of the world decides, hey, I can work from home and I don't need to drive, and hey, look, traffic's better. Hey, look, pollution's better.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of unintended consequences. Hey, look, I'm spending more time with my family. It's just like society. It's almost like society is resetting.
Right.
Like, society's a Nintendo game, and someone hit the reset button, and now we get to start a whole new game, a whole new world, and it's going to be what we choose to make of it. And it's what sucks about it is that so many people are down, and what sucks about it is so many people are suffering, and so many people are out of work, and so many people are sick, and so many people are separated from their families, and there's a lot of pain in growth. But like
Right.
any growth, I mean, if life hands you a bad experience and you survive it and you don't become better because of it, you're missing the point.
Next time on Another Day in Pandemic Paradise, I'll be talking with director, producer, owner of Crown Street Films, and my freshman year roommate, Chad Tingle, about our experiences living in Miami, Florida during different eras.
And so, there's been the argument that what happens when people, and being a documentary filmmaker, I tend to look at things in context of like 10 years. I think about the last economic shutdown and how that affected people's psyche and the transfer of wealth, from certain communities where people lost their homes that they'd lived in, and the trauma of that.
In the meantime, be smart, be safe, and be well.